Do you look back on your music life and go, I wasted so much time? Well, I do. I look at the 80s when I was fooling around making these. Of course, all we had was these on the home front, really, in the 80s. We didn't really have much other technology that we could use to make our music, much less make music income. So, really, a lot of the 80s, I feel like I could have and should have been doing a lot more. I should have been going to college in the 80s. I actually went for a long time at first, in my first college go-around. And I did do a lot. I wrote a lot of songs. I wrote hundreds of songs through the 80s and have actually now ended up recording a lot of those and putting them into licensing. So that's good, but I still have regrets. You know, the endless nights making what I thought was a good sounding thing. That was not a good sounding thing. But I, at the time, that you didn't know any better, you know, cassettes were all we have. There wasn't any computers. And a good working cassette deck is hard to find these days. I don't know if you guys have looked for a cassette deck at all to look back at your old cassettes, if you have any. But I wanted to go through the dozens of cassettes I have to be able to find old songs and to mine them for things that might be useful in licensing today. And I have found some things that I can redo, nothing I can use. But at first, listening to them made me kind of sad. Yeah, I know what you're saying. But I thought about my journey, and I really thought all those years that I was just steps away from, you know, having my dream come true. But today I want to talk about cassettes, I want to talk about regrets, and I want to talk about how they all figure into a time like this where I am finally and pretty much exactly living my dream. Well, welcome to Make Music Income, where we talk about all kinds of ways to make music income, including sync licensing, which is something we talk about a lot on this show. We also talk about microsync or stock music licensing, and we've had some interesting things happen there lately. We talk about music streaming, we talk about music publishing and royalties, we talk about music production, and I've done a lot of listening back to my music production over the years. This week, especially my early years, there are literally cassette tapes that go back to the 70s, believe it or not. Sheet music, music artists, church music, teaching music, all the kinds of things. How can we talk about so many things? Volume, volume, volume. Speaking of that, how's my volume? Test, test. Hey, give us a thumbs up if you are just coming into the show today. My name, in case you're just stumbling onto this and saying, what is this guy having regrets about? My name is Eric Copeland, and I am a music composer, music arranger, and producer, pretty much full-time. The only other thing I do besides this is help other people be music composers and arrangers and producers. But I've done all the things that you might do for music, being an artist. I've been an artist before. I've been a background singer in studios, a music career consultant for artists. I've been a music teacher, been a keyboardist, still a keyboardist, been a church music director. I've been a music marketer. I've done all these things. So to be honest, I'm still really doing a lot of those things and could be doing any of those things at any given time. Depends on who asks. But my hope with this podcast and all my channels and courses and ebooks and coaching, yes, we offer coaching, and sites that they will help you make the music income you love to make. That's very important. And part of my regrets today don't have to do with the fact that I didn't make the music I wanted to make. I did. But that you make the music you love and you make music income. Today's video in general is sponsored by the 50 ways to make music income, now in version 5. If you are wanting to learn more about music income, Well, all you have to do to get this is either go to makemusicincome.com/free and just download this. I just updated it last night. I've put new stuff in there. I've rearranged it a little bit. And so this started out as something to talk about 25 ways to make music income, and now it's up to over 50 ways to make music income. So if you want something free, it's also down in the description. You can just go down and grab it for free. Doesn't cost anything. All right. Thanks so much for watching the news. Let's get into today's subject matter here today, because it's a little bit of a serious matter on a very special, Dave just did this on his channel. It's so funny. On a very special version of the Make Music Income podcast. Yeah, this week I was digging for gold. I was looking at this and all the other cassettes and things I have. And I have DAT tapes. I've got to find somebody with a DAT tape reader. If you're in Orlando and you've got a DAT machine I can use, let me know. Because there's some demos on there I'd like to look through and see what I can find. But especially I was looking at old cassettes, stuff in the 80s and 90s. Most of everything from 2000 on I have on CD, or I have backed up, I have digitally. But everything before 2000 is pretty much analog. And it was either made on sequencers, on keyboards, or it was made on 4-track cassette recorders, or a combination of MIDI and 4-track cassette recorders. And then I would master onto DAT. And before that, I would master onto just decent cassette tapes. And it was a mess, y'all. Something happened to me, though, this week when I was digging for gold. And it made me a little sad and a little envious. And you're wondering, who are you envious of? Well, mainly you. I want you to know how lucky you are. I don't know, do you people understand? Give me a thumbs up if you understand how lucky you are to live in this day and time with music. And some of you might be saying, hey, we miss the glory days. We miss the days of artists and big deals and all that kind of stuff. And, to be honest, licensing was around back then. Even 10 years ago, stock music licensing was probably a big paying thing. Pond 5 and Audio Jungle were getting started. And I know people who I've talked to this week who were involved in it more than 10 years ago and making much bigger money than they're making now. But man, let me tell you, the biggest problem this week when I've been listening to this tape and all of these tapes is the hiss and the quality and the realization that I only had my piano and my voice, which was either not good or very bad. And I had a reel-to-reel tape deck. I had a couple of mics that weren't too bad that my dad had from playing gigs and stuff like that. But man, I just look at all the waste of time that, not just wasting my time on things I shouldn't have been wasting on, but wasting it on tape. Do you know how long it actually takes to rewind a tape? Have you tried to rewind a cassette tape? We are so spoiled in going to we're on TV or we're on our phones or whatever. We click on an app and it doesn't come up in milliseconds. We're like, what's going on? Where? And I'm like, it's going to space, but still we expect everything instantaneously. Well, there was no instantaneous with tape. You had to listen, you had to go back, you had to play it again, and you had to listen. I don't know if anybody remembers that, but anybody who remembers that life that we had, you are so lucky these days, people. You have so much. But back in the 80s or 90s, there was really only one way to make music, and that with quality, and that was to do it in a studio with musicians. And even that was recorded on some kind of tape. And you would get a cassette tape of that to listen to. Masters were done on tape, and eventually they were done. Shoot, I wasn't even involved with mastering in the 80s and maybe the late 90s, but not in the early 90s. And you couldn't even get the music engineers and musicians you can get now. The people on soundbetter.com, if you've ever gone there to find a drummer or find a singer, the pros that are available now were not available then. They were on working projects because the music industry was just rocking. They didn't need your little indie gig. And all because they were working on major gigs every day. They were doing 3 sessions a day at double or triple scale. They had no time for us. And so technology was rough for us at home. We might be able to work in a local studio, but who knows what goofball you were going to get in a local studio. And that's kind of still the case, really. And also another thing we didn't have, which is what you're looking at now, you're soaking in it, the freaking internet. We did not have this. We didn't have any of this. The only way we could work with others is if they were in our hometown. If we went to the music store and we saw somebody put a little thing up, say, looking for a guitar player, I'm your man, or need a keyboardist for a band or something like that. That's the only way that we could find other people or just luck into it. Sharing knowledge, well, the only way you'd share knowledge was with your band of friends that you knew personally. Like I said, there were things like the Thrifty Nickel. Anybody remember the Thrifty Nickel, which was like a newspaper you could get at the music store, and in it had ads, and the newspaper had ads in the newspaper for when people were looking for a band. I answered an ad in the Lexington Herald-Leader in the mid-1980s for a band needing a keyboard player, and I ended up working with them for a year and went on the road with them. And that's how I got the gig, is because I answered an ad by phone. I called them up and had an audition, got in the band, and we went touring across the United States. So that's the real way things happen. It even happened in the late 80s when I was in Chicago, a very similar deal. I saw someplace looking for a keyboard player, and I joined a band there for a couple of years. So that's the only way. Eventually, in the 90s, we started getting home computers. If any of these things, any of these words I'm about to say, relate to you as a person because you lived this, I'd be interested to know. CompuServe. Do you remember CompuServe? Do you remember AOL? Now, a lot of people remember AOL. Some of you still have AOL email addresses. You know who you are. Facebook, of course, when it first came out, in Discord, but that's now Discord. Facebook is 10 years, maybe 15 years ago. Between there was MySpace, of course. In the late 90s, there was mp3.com, and then CD Baby kind of came out and became a way for you to get your music made. At first, CD Baby was only for CDs. That's why they called themselves CD Baby. Why they continue to call themselves CD Baby, I'll never know. But you couldn't get YouTube channels and podcast things like this. Admit it. If you give me a thumbs up or just put something in the chat if you found out about music licensing online or through a podcast. I did. I absolutely did. Who I'm going to be interviewing next week was part of the company that I took my first sync licensing class with. And that is going to be next week. Very special Halloween episode of the Make Music Income podcast. But yeah, I didn't know anything about it until I heard the podcast driving along and heard about sync licensing. And then I started looking on YouTube, and this was, again, late 2010s, 2016, 2017. Even then, YouTube wasn't a repository of information about licensing. And I didn't even find out about stock music until 2021. A lot of people found out a lot about it before. Stevie B, I know, was doing videos on it. Daniel Carrizales was doing videos on it. And all of them kind of, Jesse from Sync My Music and talking about sync licensing, all of that really blew up in 2020 during the pandemic when everybody was stuck at home and they were looking for something to do with music. But you are lucky that you have the internet now and that you have these videos like this, like me, video podcasters who are not famous, but they are giving you information that you wouldn't have found otherwise. And so that is something that you're very lucky to have. But one thing that happened to me this week as I was going through these things and listening to these 80s and 90s songs and thinking about what I was doing at that time, what kind of goofball I was during those years, and what I was doing, why I was doing it exactly. And I was just kind of filled with regrets. Do you ever have music life regrets? Do you look back at your life and think, if only I had started just a little earlier, if only I had taken that time that I was making music and got a little bit more serious about it? I think that's something that I'm wondering if anybody here feels like or shares that kind of thought with me, because I really feel like that. I look at I was maturing, right? I was maturing through the 80s and 90s, becoming a better songwriter, becoming a better recording, better as technology came along. But it was a long 20 years to live through. I'm telling you, you guys have it made now. Any of you who have been only working for the last 20 years on music have had it like kings. But I have a lot of regrets about my music. I feel like there was a lot of lost time, a lot of wasted time. I wasted my first college years. But you know what? All I wanted was that music publishing deal. And so I was going to write the right songs, and I was going to go down to Nashville or send tapes to LA, and I was going to get heard and seen. Then I would get my fame that I so richly deserved as a early songwriter. But it could have been a straighter line, and I guess we all look back and we have regrets about how we did music, how we started music. And it could have been a straighter line to knowledge and to success and to experience. And this is something that if you're just kind of starting this journey, and you've thought, should I go to school for this? Should I think about like some music classes for this? Should I go to a school and learn about music? Or should I just keep messing around on my own and making beats? You know what? I think you should go to school. If you're 18, if you're 22, if you're 25, and you've got the opportunity to learn things, learn things. Now, if you're in a gig where you are traveling and you're doing a lot of things on the road and stuff, that's a different kind of learning and experience, and that's important too. And if you're not out and about, many people that I work with, and I'm working with a lot of people like this now, and that where most of my clients who come to me are working and they're just getting started in their music life. If you're just getting started in your life, don't get to a place where you look back and regret these years that you've got right now and where you weren't doing all the things you could do, because there's more that you could do. There's so much more that you could be doing even now. There's so much more I could be doing. If I would just quit doing this YouTube channel, I could get a lot more done. I could have been finishing mixing a whole album today. But yet here I am with you. Now, I tend to feel this is important knowledge to share and experience to share, and everything that I talk about, even the news or just this particular conversation, is important. There could have been more done this week than I got done if I had not done 2 video interviews, if I had not done this morning prep for this live, if I don't do this live, if I don't do the class that I do after this. I just feel those are important. I just look back at all the time. It was my late 30s before I started professional work. My 20s, where did they go? They were just like wandering around in the wilderness, just playing in bands and traveling across the United States. Now you might say, hey, Eric, that was a good experience. And it was. What that taught me was that I didn't want to be in bands and travel around the United States. And so we do learn things by doing them. And I was not in the headspace to go to school in that time. I was just not in the place in my 20s or late teens after I got out of high school. I left high school with only taking 1 class because I was already working. I was hanging out at my uncle's studio, and I was writing songs, and I just got jobs because I wanted to write songs all the time. And even though I did go to college for 3.5 years when I first got out of high school, but I just, I wandered around. I skipped class to go up and write songs in the music piano room. It was crazy. I look back at the 90s, but especially 2000 is when I really bit the bullet. A producer kind of kicked me in the butt, and he was a full-time music producer, producing artists and working in the music industry. And he said, you know what? You need to do this. You're one of the biggest wastes of talent I've ever seen. And that's something that'll kick you right in the butt. And this is where we get to the place where my regrets start to get lower as I got in. Now, it just happens that it happened when I left corporate work and I got into full-time production work and started working in a studio and opened my business and eventually moved that business to Nashville. And I've been working in Nashville for the last 20 years or so. And being a full-time producer for the last 25 years or so, now we have moved from a place of regret. There is a time that comes, a time such as this. Now, this is a bit of a biblical phrase. This goes back to a story in the Bible about someone telling Queen Esther, maybe you're a queen because the country needs you right now, right? All of you should come to a place like this, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But all of that, what I call wandering in the desert in my 80s and 90s, and maybe just trying my best to make all the recordings I could, which I did a pretty good job recording hundreds of songs through those years, and then eventually starting to working for others. But now, today, in this year, especially now, in the past month, I feel like I'm arriving at the place that I've wanted to be since I was a teenager. I just dreamed of getting one music publishing deal. I thought that would be it. All I'd have to do is get a music publishing deal and everything would be good. Anybody here had a dream that if you got signed or if you got a deal, a publishing deal, or if you got this or that would make life happen. That would just make it work. You'd all be good. You wouldn't even have to worry anymore about any money or anything. Well, I still got to worry about money. But I have multiple publishing deals now. I have new financial freedom that is coming from working on music that I want to work on. I have new opportunities coming every day. I literally started working with a library, a new major library this week, who may end up giving me upfront money, almost maybe a work for hire type of deal. I have new contacts every week. I just made a bunch of new contacts from the PMA and different things. And every single video I do, an interview I do, it's a new contact. I have new incomes coming in that never came in before. All the years that I regret, that I feel were wasted, all the bad cassettes that were filled with multiple versions of the same song for some reason. Now, some of those might get reused. All the songs that I played endless, terrible synth and piano solos on because I didn't work with anybody else, and I didn't have anybody who could play guitar solos and different things in my songs. And back in the 80s and 90s, every song had a guitar solo in the middle of it or something. All those pop songs, jazz songs, gospel songs, guess what? Some of them have already been reused and are already in television shows. So maybe that time wasn't as wasted as I thought because of a time such as this. All the trips to conferences, I'm not talking about back in the day when I was trying to become a music producer and would go to music conferences and put out a table with all my tapes and all my CDs and everything, and business cards and everything. All of those trips, all of those meetings where publishers listened to 3 songs and said, thanks, good luck to you. All the long drives home from Nashville. It's only 3.5 hours, but when you go down there thinking, this could be it, this is my big break, and then you're driving back saying, well, that wasn't it. But all those long trips home were kind of the impetus for me to start my own company and start my own work. And then my coming of age in local studios. A lot of you might be in that area now where you're finding local people and local studios to work in. Moving to Nashville, and then 20 years of working with some of the greatest musicians and engineers in the world. And then going back and getting my bachelor's in Nashville in my 40s and getting my master's in composition in my 50s. And that was the most fun I've ever had. If you are getting to a place in life where you're like, I need the next step, boy, if you have any interest in going back to school in music, you should. It's so much fun. Especially later in life where the pressure is off. There's a lot of pressure on 18-year-olds and 20-year-olds to go to college and graduate and get a job and all this. But when you're 40 or 50 or whatever, and you're going back to school, the pressure is off. You're doing it for fun. And especially a composition degree where we're composing every week and we're doing orchestrations every week. Whoa, is that fun. Getting my first deal with BMG that I still have, and I just talked with my BMG guy this week. He's the one who hooked me up with the other library and still is taking albums for me. I have a new album popping out here in the next week or so. these are the things you're seeing on this channel, these new deals, this maturation. I'm still maturing. I can't imagine in 10 years I'll look back at my current self and say, you disappoint me. I can't imagine that will happen.
You disappoint me.
I can't imagine that I would be saying that to myself in 10 years, because right now I am rocking and rolling. I'm getting new deals. I'm learning new things. You've seen my first placements. You've seen my first licensing income. You've seen my first 4-figure check that just happened. All of this stuff is leading to now where I finally seem to be in the place, in a time where I can do the music that I want to do with the people I want to work with. And this is a great place to be. And I can do it the way I want. And I'm getting that ability to do things more the way I want. When I was a producer, I did the things the way I wanted to, but to some extent I was at a client's mercy. The client was who was making the rules, and I had to play by those rules. Now I'm playing by my rules. And at some point here soon, every decision will be mine, and it's only going to get better. This is my time. I'm not bragging. I'm just excited. This is the time, and it took, and mainly because now it took a long time to get here. If we start at me graduating high school, but we got to go back before graduating high school, because I started writing songs when I was 13 years old. So we're talking about almost 50 years of different times that sometimes we're wandering, sometimes we're focused, and then the past 20, I would say, I've been pretty focused on making music. But even getting back to being a composer and getting back into licensing and all that stuff, that's only happened in the past 6 or 7 years. And so finally I'm here. Now, I want to just say this last word. This could be your time. Your times such as this. You probably have your cassettes or your CDs or your MP3s or whatever it is that you have, your DATs or whatever, that you look back on and you go, boy, I'm glad I'm making better music than that now. Or maybe you're in that spot where you feel like I'm not making the music I want to make yet. Listen, your regrets about how you didn't do music when you had the chance, or when you were just getting good, or when the getting was good, it's not all for naught, if you will. It's important that you go through this time. I had to go through it. Everybody has gone through this time where you are learning, and there could be a time such as this, like there is for me, for you as well. Not only could, but probably will. If you stay on the path, the thing I never did, the thing I won't ever do, the thing I can't do is quit. And the people that I've met in my life, especially as a producer, the story was the same with everybody who would come to me. They would say, I was going to start music and a full-time music career when I was, coming out of school, but then, I met my wife, or I met my husband, or I got hurt, or there was a sickness, or I got another job or something like that. And there was always this thing that happened that made them stop music. Listen, I got married twice. I got jobs. I've had all sorts of things happen in my life. You know what never stopped in the background? Music. Never stopped. I kept doing it. I did not stop. And I think most people stop. I think most people pause. They say, I'm going to take a little break from this. And the next thing you know, it's 20 years later. It's 10 years later. It's 5 years later. And so your time such as this could be when you choose for it to be. And you say, all right, you know what? I'm done trying to play a game here. I'm done messing around and serving other people only. Now, you have to serve people. I'm serving you right now. And if I'm not serving you, I'm serving the people through the week that I am working with and working for, or I'm serving the libraries that I'm trying to get music to. I'm serving somebody. Bob Dylan said it. You got to serve somebody. And your time could be now, and maybe it is now. And you've been through your desert too. All right, everybody. Well, I hope this has been somewhat helpful for you today. This was just something that was kind of in my head as I was going through these cassettes, and I was going through the regret, and I was thinking about all the things that were bothering me, and I thought maybe, just maybe, that this could be something that would also help you too in your music life, wherever you are, whether you are in a place where you are trying to do music full-time, part-time, you're considering dropping music, you're considering getting more serious about music. I hope this has been somewhat helpful so that you won't have regrets. And even if you do, you'll see this as a time that was leading to a time such as this when you are doing something more, something that is completely feeding your soul, something that the days go by so fast and you almost can't sleep because you're so excited to get up every day and do what you do. That's where I am now. And that is the place to be. Hey, remember to go to makemusicincome.com/free or down in the description and get the new 50 Ways to Make Music Income ebook, the new version 5, and it's there for you. Thanks everybody for being here. We'll see you next week with our very special Halloween episode. We'll be on Thursday on Halloween itself. So we'll see you then. Thanks for being here and have a good weekend. See you later.